What is up, my friends? The Watchers is a brand new film from first-time writer-director Ishana Night Shyamalan about Mina, a 28-year-old artist who gets stranded in an expansive, untouched forest in Western Ireland. When finding shelter, she becomes trapped alongside three strangers that are watched and stalked by mysterious creatures each night. And so the question is it worth watching? I was actually fortunate enough recently to attend a Q&A with the director Ishana herself. We watched the movie and then we heard her talk about it a little bit, and it was an awesome experience, but there really is a lot more to this story than meets the eye. And I have a lot of thoughts. So before I dive in, I do want to let you know that this review is going to be a spoiler-free review. So if you're worried about watching, I'll stop with the puns, I promise. You're all good, no spoilers here. But as always, make sure you smash like and subscribe if you're new here, and let's get going. So like I was saying, I had the opportunity to go check out an advanced screening of The Watchers, and honestly, before attending it and before seeing this movie, I don't really know where my hype level was at. Going into it, you can't help but think about M. Night Shyamalan, and if you're going in with those expectations, I don't know, he's like one of the only directors in the history of directors that can either make the best movie you've ever seen or the absolute worst movie you've ever seen. There's no in between, and so I was really curious to see how his daughter would tackle the horror genre. And funny enough, I would say that she has done what her dad cannot. She made a movie that fell right in between for me. And for a first-time director like her, I would call that a success. The Watchers definitely isn't a movie that I am like over the moon about, but after listening to her talk about it, I found out some things that made some of my dislikes about the movie make a bit more sense, and I kind of came around to them a bit more. Something to note going in is that this film is based off of a novel. It's a horror novel by A.M. Shine called The Watchers, and I wish I would have known that going in, but suddenly all of the little conveniences that happened throughout the plot made a lot more sense, and you got the feeling that this movie was just a really close adaptation. She even talked a bit about that. Somebody asked, how do you approach, adapting this story from the novel? And she said that her intentions were to really honor the book by staying as close to it as possible and then just trying to add to it from there. And I haven't read the story, and so I could be way off base here, but it seemed like she was following a very strict narrative. And sometimes when you're adapting straight from a book, like the story within a novel can be very straightforward, but you can still be really tense and be like, oh my gosh, what a crazy twist and turn of events. But when you're watching it firsthand and when you're actually viewing these things happening, sometimes it just feels a little bit convenient. There are definitely things within this plot where you kind of roll your eyes and you're like, really? You didn't see that? Like, if you watch my channel, I'm even the type of person that typically gives things the benefit of the doubt, but there was just several things in this movie where I was like, oh dude, come on. But I will say the third act of the film, in very typical Shyamalan fashion, roped me in. She did mention that her dad is a massive inspiration to her, obviously, one would assume. But with her stepping into the horror genre, you have a lot to compare and contrast to when it comes to M. Night, and the twist in the end, it was very sneaky, and if you're a fan of that sort of thing, it's really fun. I didn't see it coming whatsoever, and that's one of the things that I've always enjoyed the most about some of M. Night's films. It's like the end of Sixth Sense or Unbreakable, just things that hit you on a deep level, and I felt like this movie was really reaching for that and trying to get there. Did it hit me on that deep of a level? No, but I do admire them for really, going for it. But I do want to talk about some of the successes that I found in this film. The main one is really that it's carried by a really solid performance by Dakota Fanning. Somebody that I'm sure a lot of us just grew up with. Like, every time you see her in a movie, you're like, hey, that's Dakota Fanning. War of the Worlds, Man on Fire. It's the Macaulay Culkin effect, where you feel like you've known someone since they were a kid, and she was awesome. The entire story is really resting on her shoulders to make us believe that any of this could actually be happening. Trapped in the woods in this shelter with a mirror that turns into a two-way at night so they can't see these things that are looking at them, and they have to put on a performance. It's really eerie at times. I think the sound really helps with that. There's some like signs elements. Somebody that I saw the movie with was actually saying that you can kind of hear like the little And that's where I say it's reminiscent of like just that eerie feeling where you're like, ooh, what is that? Like, I don't even know what that sound is. But I will say that aside from Dakota, I really wasn't obsessed with any of the other performances. Olwen Fouéré plays a prominent role. You might recognize her from the newest Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel. And then you also have Georgina Campbell from Barbarian. I was actually really excited to see her. She just didn't have a lot to do in this movie, and the emotionally effective moments that they provided for her, I just feel like she didn't win me over in any of those moments. And there's also this new dude that I've never seen in anything, Oliver Finnegan, and unfortunately, I was just not a fan of his really in this movie. I got what they were going for with the character, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't really work for me. I don't know, just a lot of the performance stuff fell flat for me, and that's where the plausibility, the believability, if you will, was kind of teetering on the edge the whole time. It's hard to take somebody serious when they say they've been out in the wild for 5 months, but their hair is like perfectly gelled and they're wearing the Calvin Klein catalog. But I can look past those things. And like I said, Dakota Fanning really held the whole thing together. And I think one of the most important things is what Ishana managed to convey visually. That was pretty damn surprising for a first-time director, especially with some of the mirror shots and some of the landscape shots. And then, you know, there are the Watchers and just kind of like what they look like. It's very, very interesting. There's really not a lot in this movie that scared me, but some of the visuals will definitely stay with me for a bit. I wanted to be scared, and unfortunately, I didn't really get that, but something that intrigued me the most was like the fantastical element that's put into this film. This movie might surprise you there, and it has some deep-seated roots to some very interesting, you know, like folklore tales that are actually surrounded by some conspiracy and legend. What if the stories that you've been told all your life weren't make-believe? I still believe in Santa Claus, so. But the score ties into that. It has a really nice fantasy element to it, which Ishana touched on in the Q&A, and I don't know, all in all, I think that it was a very unique and awesome starting point for this new director on the scene, and I'm really looking forward to like future projects that she makes. Oh, and also there's a bird in this film. His name's Darwin, and he's the MVP. That's actually my favorite character. The bird is my favorite character. But as always, I gotta give my Jones Vibe star rating. Now, this is based purely off of my enjoyment level. It's not too critical, it's just kind of what I was feeling in the theater. And my friends, I'm gonna give The Watchers 3 out of 5 stars, no doubt. But if you've seen this movie, please let me know what you thought down below. Also, if you plan on seeing this and you haven't seen it already, what are your thoughts going into it? What are your thoughts on Ishana Night Shyamalan? Do you think someday she'll be a better director than her dad? Who knows? Please let me know all of your thoughts down below. Also, make sure if you haven't already that you smash like. I really appreciate that support, guys. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out on Instagram as well as X. I'm at Jones Vibes Only. And don't forget to keep up the good vibes. But that was The Watchers. And man, this actually kind of feels similar. It's like I'm recording this video and then you guys are looking at me, but I can't see you, but you're... God, that's kind of creepy.
Jones Vibes.